There are allegations regarding identity theft, fraudulent forged resumes, contractual theft, fraudulent billing, price fixing, collusion.
Welcome back to Northern Perspective, everyone. I'm Cypher.
And I'm Fox. We've been following the ArriveCan news from a distance over the last couple weeks, but things started to blow up over the last few days, so we thought we would do a video on it.
When we sat down to start researching this, I initially expected that we would review Larry Brock's questioning of the Auditor General Committee, we would reference a couple of articles, and then be done with it. However, after 6 straight hours of researching this today, I felt like Keanu Reeves in The Matrix falling down the rabbit hole because every time I thought I was at the end, something else came up. We have uncovered facts that we don't think any of the mainstream media outlets have covered, and this will blow the entire story wide open.
So without further delay, Northern Perspective is proud to present our investigation of the Arrive scam. The news that broke over the last 2 weeks about the Arrive scam app was a result of initial audit that Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives asked for via a motion they put forward back on November 1st of 2022. However, a week and a half earlier, on October 20th, 2022, the event that prompted the motion occurred at a meeting of the Standing Committee of Government Operations and Estimates with the founders of one of the key companies that was awarded the contracts for the ArriveCan app, GC Strategies. Let's take a look.
To GC Strategies, Mr. Firth, how many employees do you have?
We have 2 employees, myself and my business partner.
Okay. And your contract with the Government of Canada lists your work as a residential address. Is that correct? I don't need the address, but is that correct?
Yeah, we had physical location downtown from 2015 to 2020, and we now have home offices.
And without getting into your detailed CV, are you programmers or app designers yourselves?
Absolutely not. We are IT recruiters. We cut our teeth in the industry working for large staffing firms.
Okay.
And we decided to go out by ourselves.
So in this context, your work for the Government of Canada, you're the broker, the middleman between the government and the service provider. Is that correct?
Essentially, yeah. They would come to us with the requirements they ask for, and we facilitate that.
And what's the when we're talking about the full scope of this project, lots of publicly reported numbers, what is the commission for that intermediary, that middleman role? We're led to understand that it's 30%.
That would be at the very top end. Industry standards are anywhere from 15 to 30, depending on the skill set, the type of resource that is required.
Now, regarding the app, who approached who? So the Government of Canada reached out to you and you did not reach out to them with respect to this contract. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And do you have a list of the department and the departmental officials who initiated that contact?
No, I do not. I thought I was here to testify. I do not have that with me right now.
Okay. Is that something that with respect to this question, is that something that you will undertake to provide to this committee in writing?
Within 48 hours, I could probably...
Okay, that's great. I appreciate that. Thank you. So today, right before, I have a question about some news that was reported today, but I am curious about the total amount of money that your company received from the Government of Canada for the app, for the ArriveCan app.
For the specific component we were responsible for the application?
Yes.
Yep. So, GC Strategies is... We've invoiced about $44 million over the past 2 years for all of our federal work,
yep,
with over 20 departments. But the component of the application, we were responsible for staffing, which included 2 years of support, maintenance, and over 150 releases on 3 platforms. We were approximately billed $4.5 million per year.
Okay. Today, the CEO of a company called ThinkOn said that his company had nothing to do with ArriveCan. This is reported in the Globe and Mail, and it says, quote, "We have received no money from CBSA," and, quote, "We're not even remotely in that space," end quote. So Our understanding is that your organization facilitated the design and build of this app and connected all the components. So what role did Think On play?
So first, sorry, Honourable Speaker, we are an IT staffing firm. We actually have no influence whatsoever in day-to-day activities or have any influence on how it's architected or how it's built. We provided a team that they asked for that designed a specific ArriveCan component.
You didn't supervise the people. When you say that, you did supervise certain aspects of their task, right? You know, like for example, since you were the employer of record, you would have made sure that they got to work and they did, and they were doing the job that they were supposed to. You just weren't directing them as to the technical specifications they were supposed to build. Would that be correct?
Yes. So obviously, everybody was working during this pandemic. This is the whole reason we built this application. Everybody was working from home. But it was the project managers and the team leads provided by the organization that would be monitoring and maintaining and making sure we would only get called if they weren't performing and they needed to have a resource replaced.
And the manager of the team, for example, did you assemble just people who were working for a manager within the government, or did you also have a team manager of the people that you assembled?
There was a combination of both.
Combination of both. Yeah. So how many managers did you have amongst the people that you engaged of the contractors?
The employees or the...
Yeah, your employees who were subcontractors to the government.
Yes.
How many people total was the team and how many were managers?
Over the tenure, there were 5 or 6 subject matter firms that each had their project leads.
Okay, so I cannot stress how important this testimony was. Mr. Barrett asks Mr. Firth, "How many employees do you have?" His response is 2. Himself and his business partner. Second thing, "Are you programmers or app designers yourselves?" The response, "No, we're not. We are recruiters." 3. "So you're the broker between the Government of Canada and the service provider?" Response, "In a sense, yes. They bring us the requirements and we facilitate that." So let's just be very clear on this point. I'm not a liberal, so that doesn't mean I'm lying. These 2 guys at GC Strategies, they don't do any actual IT related work whatsoever. All they do is find other companies or people to do the work, and for that, they take up to a 30% cut of the contracted work. They sign the contract with the government, and then they find organizations or people to actually complete the work, and then they take credit for it on their website. See? This was later admitted in the testimony when Liberal Anthony Housefather is asking Firth how many managers he had, and Firth goes on to specify that there were 4 or 5 firms, meaning other organizations, that were actually doing the work. So rather than have one app development firm with the specialization to actually build the app, they farmed it out on multiple contracts in order to skim up to 30% off of each contract.
Firth went on to strongly defend GC Strategies' contribution to ArriveCan, which travelers use to upload proof of vaccination and quarantine plans when necessary, saying they did a, quote, very good job, end quote. Quote, "I think the $9 million we charged was value for money," end quote, he told the committee. Quote, "We are very proud of the team we gave the Government of Canada. They never missed a deadline and they completed all their tasks and deliverables," end quote. Yeah, I'm sure you guys thought that. In an article written by the National Post on October 21st, 2022, the day after the hearing, it states, "GC's address on a government website appears to be a private residence, but Firth explained that after having an Ottawa office from 2015 to 2020, the company's 2 principals now work from their homes." The hearing on Thursday provided some insight into how ArriveCan ended up costing taxpayers $54 million when certain industry figures said it could have been produced for much, much less. GC Strategies was the highest billing contractor in a list tabled in Parliament by Canada Border Services Agency, CBSA, of 23 separate companies paid under the project. As well as building parts for the app, the team GC hired had to maintain it over 2 years, produce 150 releases, modifications that often reflected changes in pandemic rules, said Firth. Their subcontractors included as many as 30 people at a time. Firth agreed with Liberal MP Anthony Housefather that a software company that said it put together a clone of the app over the course of 2 days was an unfair comparison to ArriveCan. But Mark Weber, president of the Customs and Immigration Union, which represents CBSA staff, argued to the committee that ArriveCan did little, if anything, to improve the security of Canada's border.
So the app didn't work, didn't provide any value, and so far, it seems to have only served to enrich these two guys at GC Strategies. This obviously isn't the whole picture.
Far from it. Hold on, everybody. We are just getting started.
This committee meeting prompted the Conservatives to put forth the motion to get to the bottom of what exactly happened during the build of this app and why it was so expensive. Let's take a look.
And now we learn that they spent $54 million on an app that we didn't need, that didn't work, and that could have been designed for $250,000. Madam Speaker, we looked into this. We wanted to know where the money went, who got rich. So the government tabled documents in the House that told us that among the contracted companies, one was Think On, which was paid $1.2 million for QR code experimentation. Only problem is that the company Think On said, "Dream on." We didn't get the money. They said, quote, "We have received no money from the CBSA." Now, the government has since put out a correction saying, whoops, we thought that we gave them $1.2 million. It turns out we didn't. In fairness, Napoleon said, never ascribe to malice that which can be explained by incompetence, right? Okay? When $54 million goes out the door and government officials can't get their story straight about where it went, the least we can do is have an audit. Put the Auditor General in charge. Look into these costs. Find out who got the money, who got rich, and why we spent $54 million on an app that could have been designed for $250,000. Why did we waste this money when Canadians are paying so much? How could this government be so out of touch? We need answers. We need the truth. Support this motion, and let's get to that truth.
So, that motion passed by a vote of 174 to 149 in the House of Commons, which directed the Auditor General to dig into what went on with this. Now, we fast forward to an article in the Globe and Mail on October 4th, 2023.
RCMP probes alleged misconduct in outsourced CBSA contract. The RCMP is investigating allegations of misconduct involving an outsourced IT project at the Canada Border Services Agency after two tech entrepreneurs who performed work for the agency warned senior officials about improper contracting practices and cozy relationships between the public service and private firms. The allegations stem from a relatively small contract, valued at less than $500,000, but the money flowed from a larger $21.2 million contract for general services that was also used by the agency to fund outsourcing work related to the ArriveCan app. The $54 million cost of the tool for travelers during the pandemic generated months of controversy and committee hearings after the spending details were first revealed by the Globe and Mail late last year. The pilot project and ArriveCan involved the same three technology companies and were overseen by some of the same senior public servants. They also both share layers of subcontracting that keep key details, such as what the work involved and who received payments, from being disclosed to the public. The founders of a small Montreal-based software company called Bottler, Ritika Dutt, and Amir Morv alerted the CBSA to their concerns in September of 2021, and again in a more detailed report in November of 2022. In response to questions from the Globe, the agency has revealed for the first time that after receiving that second report, it launched an internal review and referred the matter to the RCMP.
Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv told the Globe about their experiences because of what they view as questionable contracting practices in federal government procurement, and provided rare insight into how federal officials interacted with private sector firms that receive millions of dollars in outsourcing contracts. The Globe and Mail has investigated their allegations, analyzing thousands of pages of documents released through access to information requests. The Globe has also reviewed extensive documentation compiled by the entrepreneurs, including contracting records and audio recordings of their conversations with IT consultants and public servants. Their allegations center on a network of 3 Ottawa-based companies: GC Strategies, Dalian Enterprises, and Coradix, and cozy ties with senior government bureaucrats. GC Strategies was embroiled in a political storm after the Globe reported in October 2022 that it received more than $9 million, more than any other contractor, to work on the ArriveCan app. The agency has since released updated figures showing GC Strategies received $11.2 million, and Coradix and Dalian received a combined $4.3 million.
Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv interacted with Mr. Firth for about a 2-year period as GC Strategies was receiving millions of dollars in federal contracts from more than 20 federal departments. In addition to ArriveCan, GC Strategies also worked on the COVID Alert app, a contact tracing program that was promoted during the early days of the pandemic. Before they met Mr. Firth, they were finalizing what would become a 5-year funding agreement through the Department of Justice worth nearly $1.3 million in partnership with legal aid organizations across the country. Bottler obtained the justice funding by applying to a public tender without the support of any lobbyists or consultants. The developers said they were first approached by GC Strategies' managing partner, Christian Firth, via LinkedIn in late 2019. Mr. Firth said he was reaching out on behalf of his quote-unquote client, who he later said was the CBSA's then Director General, Cameron McDonald. Quote, "Good evening, Ratika," end quote, Mr. Firth wrote in a November 4th, 2019 LinkedIn message, misspelling her first name. Quote, "A client of mine has asked that I reach out to you to look into starting a proof of concept project for their government department. Are you free for a quick call this week to discuss further? Cheers, Christian," end quote. During a call a few days later, they said Mr. Firth explained that his client was the Director General at the agency. He later confirmed it was Mr. McDonald. Mr. Firth told them he could act as a broker to secure a contract with the agency. He also promised he could open doors for them to land contracts with other departments or have Bottler's software approved for use across the entire public service, which would be a substantial contract. He explained that he would do this for a fee that is contingent on successfully landing government contracts. Quote, "We don't get paid unless you do," end quote, he told them over the phone. Quote, "We typically demand 20%, end quote.
So the work that they were solicited for was a chatbot that allows users who may have experienced sexual harassment to better understand whether their situation breached any employment policies or criminal laws. This was not ArriveCan at this point in 2019. Back to the article. The fact that the agency reached out through Mr. Firth rather than directly raised some initial suspicions, which Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv say is why they decided to record their conversations with Mr. Firth and others. Those recorded conversations show Mr. McDonald directed Bottler in February 2020 to, quote, "Please work with Christian," end quote, and, quote, "Let Christian work his magic," end quote. The conversations also reveal that Mr. Firth described Mr. McDonald in November 2019 as a friend and said, quote, "I've been with him his whole career in the government," end quote. Mr. Firth referred to various senior public servants as friends. Mr. Firth also urged the 2 Bottler entrepreneurs to single out Mr. McDonald for praise when meeting with other senior government officials. Quote, "I just want to make sure that he gets taken care of, right?" End quote. Mr. Firth told Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv on December 11, 2019. Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv would later include Mr. Firth's comments in their 2022 misconduct report to the agency leadership. A month after his initial outreach on LinkedIn, Mr. Firth was setting up meetings for Bottler with officials at the border agency. In a December 13, 2019 phone call with Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv, Mr. Firth stressed that Mr. McDonald should receive special recognition as the quote-unquote brainchild who created the relationship between the agency and Bottler.
Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv said they were shocked to discover that after interacting with GC Strategies and Mr. McDonald for months, the funding of their software was approved through an agency contract with another company, Dalian, without their knowledge. They say they had never heard of Dalian at the time and never worked with any Dalian employees. They said that they later discovered that Coradix had submitted forms to the agency about their work experience without their knowledge or permission. For instance, Ms. Dutt said a 2-month summer internship at Deloitte on her resume was inflated in an invoicing points form to say she had 51 months of experience working for the accounting firm. Years of experience is used in federal contracting to determine whether a contractor qualifies for the position. It is also used to calculate per diem rates. Mr. Firth, GC Strategies, Coradix, and Dalian did not respond to multiple requests for comment.
So why is that important? That is important because the contractor is then able to bill the government a much higher rate for that contractor. Why is that important? Because that increases the price of the contract, thereby increasing the percentage that the agency can actually take. More money for them. Back to the article.
The contract for Bottler to provide its services was not a direct contract between Bottler and the Border Services Agency. In fact, Bottler's company's name was not mentioned at all, nor was GC Strategies. Instead, the agency relied on a contract with Dalian and Coradix. In a separate subcontracting document between Dalian and GC Strategies, which is not a direct contract with the government, GC Strategies is listed as a subcontractor to Dalian. Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv, along with an independent contractor named Patrick Van Abema, are listed as consultants. The subcontracting document laid out a timeline of 6 quote-unquote deliverable items between February and June 2021, each with a value of about $56,000 for a total of $336,000. In his email, Mr. Firth described how the federal funding was supposed to have been divided between him, Bottler, Dalian, and Coradix. The email offers contradictory information and indicates he had pulled himself out of the deal so as not to compromise his efforts to secure a larger government-wide contract for Bottler.
The Bottler project was ultimately accounted for through a contract with Coradix and Dalian numbered 4741-206529. It was first awarded in August 2019 for quote-unquote informatics professional services and had a total value of $21.2 million. A review by the Globe found that the same contract appears in the disclosure of billings related to ArriveCan. The Globe and Mail asked Mr. McDonald for comment on Bottler's allegations and to explain his relationship and interactions with Mr. Firth. Mr. McDonald, who has since been promoted to Assistant Deputy Minister at Health Canada's COVID and Pandemic Response Secretariat, provided a brief emailed statement in response. Quote, "I wholly refute any inferences of wrongdoing," end quote, he wrote. Quote, "I was not aware of any fraudulent activity as laid out below, nor have I entered into any actions that would go against the Code of Values and Ethics," end quote.
Quote, "Unannounced to you as Coradix/Dalian were brought in a pass-through and they demanded 15% for doing so. CBSA were pissed at the overall pricing and threatened to pull the contract," end quote, Mr. Firth wrote in an email. Quote, "Your cost plus 15% for me and 20% for Coradix, etc., it rose close to $500,000, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. I was not prepared to slow the process down and stop our first client from purchasing, so I removed myself from the equation completely and gave them a 15% discount. Attached is the contract that shows $336,000 to GCS from Coradix and how they broke out the deliverables. What has made the situation worse for me is they even screwed up the total amount and made it $336,000, not $350,000. I hope you're okay with $336,000. I didn't mention this as I hope that you would be none the wiser and receive your cash and never know I removed myself from the deal to get our GOC Pathfinder. But now they have screwed up the amount, I need direction from you on what you would like me to do. Recover from Coradix as CBSA will not budge, or let it slide and look out to the next one and recover, CRA, etc." End quote.
So in that email, Firth is essentially saying that the government contracted out to Dalian. Dalian then contracted out to GC Strategies. GC Strategies then contracted out to Bottler. And He's saying, oh, well, I took a 15% hit because it would have been too much money and the CBSA would have been pissed about it. So I took the hit on this. Whereas he also said they were supposed to issue the contract for $350,000, but only $336,000, so they screwed up. I smell bullshit there, everybody. Guaranteed it was $350,000. He took $14,000 off the top. And it was only $336,000 left for the people actually doing the work. Back to the article. Quote from Miss Dutt. When we received the contract, that was very obviously a huge shock to us because we had no knowledge of this, she said. End quote. Ms. Dutt said they raised informal concerns with the Border Services Agency, but continued to work on the project without payment into the summer because government officials assured them the contract would be revised. By September 2021, Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv had had enough and filed a formal misconduct complaint via the September 27, 2021 email to Mr. Utano and another agency official they had been dealing with. Quote, given that this is a project aimed at combating misconduct and already has so many eyes on it, it just does not make any sense to move forward with the current structure and red flags or risk jeopardizing this project in any capacity, end quote, they wrote, saying they could no longer work with Mr. Firth, Cordex, or Dalian. From then on, they started an investigation into their own situation by filing numerous access to information requests to obtain contracting details.
They learned that the original contract through which their services were obtained was through an existing contract for IT services. Like with ArriveCan, the border agency had turned to a general standing offer contract for IT services and added a specific request, formerly known as a task authorization, to obtain what they needed. By going this route, the agency can avoid a new public competition. It also means that the public disclosure of government contracts do not tell the full story as to what is being purchased or who is being paid to perform the work. Through their research, Ms. Dutt and Mr. Morv found that Dalian was submitting invoices and receiving payments based on what they allege are false claims. Quote, they used a contract that had nothing to do with our software. They used our name without our permission, end quote, Mr. Morv said. Quote, they forged our working experiences, end quote. The Dalian website describes the company as, quote, Aboriginally owned, veteran operated, end quote. The website does not provide further detail on its ownership structure.
So, what this boils down to is this. Initially, Cameron McDonald, who worked for the Canadian Border Services Agency, wanted a chatbot app prototype. He reached out to his longtime buddy Christian Firth at GC Strategies, and he went and found the Bottler team. Firth wanted a big juicy commission, so he pushed Bottler to get the app up and running, and they tried pitching it as a government-wide program with McDonald coaching them how to do it. Firth never provided a contract with Bottler at all. Then it's revealed that the ArriveCan app is in the works, and CBSA gave Dalian $21 million, in addition to the $9 million directed to GC Strategies. Based on the email that GC Strategies sent to Bottler about the $336,000, it looks like the contractors were taking their cut, up to 30%, as you heard Firth say in the hearing, giving that out to other contractors like GC Strategies, who take another cut of what's left, and then subcontract that out again.
Now, the interesting thing about Cordex and Dalian is that they are located in the same address of the same building in the same office. Here is Coredix's website and address, and here is Dalian's. Even the fax number is exactly the same. Now, some people might say, so what? They share an office. That happens, right? But it goes one step further. We even found that the same employees work for both companies. Check out this LinkedIn profile of an employee who literally worked at two different companies as the same role at the exact same time.
This all leads to one thing. And this is the hammer, folks. Normally, the government relies on bids for contracts if the value is high enough, and this is based on their publicly reviewable procurement process. They also give preference to companies with Aboriginal ownership, which Dalian advertises that it does. So you have two IT contracting companies that just farm out work, Cordix and Dalian, which, let's be honest now, they operate as one company, but for the benefit of bidding on government contracts, can operate as two in order to guarantee that one of them gets it. Now toss in GC Strategies, who has a very cozy relationship with them, as well as insider relationships with the government, and that means each of them gets to subcontract to each other, potentially taking up to a 60% markup between the three companies on the contract at 20% apiece, which leaves the remaining 40% for the unlucky schmuck who actually does the work.
Now, let's not forget Cameron McDonald. Remember, Christian Firth said that he had been with him his whole career in the government. You're going to tell me that McDonald hasn't been getting kickbacks this whole time from his buddies in GC Strategies, Dalian, and Cordix? We now have our answer, folks, as to why this allegedly costs so much. Pure corruption between government employees and the contractors of the contractors of the contractors that subcontract out the work.
Now, finally, let's check out Larry Brock work his magic when questioning the Auditor General, because that's how we got here in the first place.
Based on what I've heard on your responses to my colleagues, are you saying that your office, you in particular, found out that the RCMP is investigating the contracts under the $54 million ArriveCan app not by the Government of Canada itself, but from reading the Globe and Mail story?
Yes, despite my staff being in auditing all of the departments in this audit, management had not informed me that they had referred a contracting matter, which involved many common players that we are looking at, to the RCMP. The morning that the newspaper article was released, senior management did reach out to my office, and my team has been in contact with them and in continuous dialogue since then.
I want to break that response down a little bit more. You mentioned that you were dealing with a number of departments. Can you name those departments that did not inform you about the RCMP investigation?
So it's my understanding from reading the article that it was the Canada Border Services Agency that did the referral, and so I would have expected that they would have informed us. Through the course of our audit, we always ask questions linked to actual suspected or alleged fraud, and we would expect that there's an ongoing responsibility for officials to keep us informed of any matters that are relevant to the subject that we are auditing. And so I am disappointed that they did not tell us.
Well, not only are you disappointed, but Canadians are disappointed. Members of Parliament are disappointed. You have been charged with a very serious responsibility, and one would think at the very least the government would exercise some transparency and accountability to notify you about this investigation, and they failed. Failed you, failed Canadians. Moving on. The actual story itself, was that read by you on the 3rd of October when it was released?
I read it at some point. I can't tell you that I actually read it on the 3rd, but I know that I've read it, and I've read several articles since then. Yes.
Before I get into more specific questions, I take it you read it thoroughly. It's a very long article.
I did. I actually reread it last night just in case,
Right.
but it is a very lengthy article. Yes.
As an Auditor General for this country, did it raise red flags to you?
Well, it in my mind covers one half of the story, and I think I needed to understand some of the statements in the article. It has caused me, as an auditor, to ask my team to go back and make sure that we've covered off everything we should have. We have the intention of re-interviewing people we interviewed and asking them questions. We have intentions of interviewing new people as a result of the article.
Can you identify who the new people are that you're interviewing?
So I'm still in conversation with the Canada Border Services Agency about that, and we want to inform them, but we did tell them a few days ago that our intention is to speak directly with certain contractors, and so we asked them to, let them know that we would be doing that.
Okay.
So until we've sort of landed on that, and as I said, we don't typically share the scope of our work and who we talk to during our audit.
And I'm not
we'll
asking
do
that. I understand your preamble, the opening statement, and the restrictions that you have. As far as new people to interview, would that include the two stakeholders from Bottler?
So again, we're going to figure out who we want to talk to. We still have to request certain information. The information I would like to see is the actual allegations that were given to the department. And until I've seen that, I'm not sure if we want to interview anyone from the organization that laid those allegations.
At the core of the allegations, they use the phrase misconduct. But when you go deep dive into the particular story, it goes beyond misconduct. It goes into criminality. And that's why the RCMP is investigating it. There are allegations regarding identity theft, fraudulent, forged resumes, contractual theft, fraudulent billing, price fixing, collusion, all with senior bureaucrats with the Government of Canada and the three contractors in question.
So we didn't want to interrupt that because we laid a lot of information on you with the article that Brock and the Auditor General are referencing. Some of you who have seen that testimony before probably didn't have any of the context for it. Now you do. And there's even some context that we laid out just because of the length of the article and honestly how poorly it was written. We actually had to rearrange sections all around to actually make it cohesive and somewhat chronological. And even then, we had trouble laying it out. But one of the people that was in the article that we didn't mention yet was Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland. She was involved when it came to the Bottler GC Strategies relationship. Because GC Strategies was saying, hey, we need to get this in front of Chrystia Freeland if we want your software to go across the government. That's the chatbot software. So there's a lot going on here. And there's definitely some backroom handshakes, some backroom deals going on. As Brock said, this isn't just a case of bad process. There is deliberate criminality here. Absolutely deliberate.
Well, the RCMP is going to have fun with this one. I hope that it lands all of these criminals behind bars because that's our money they're stealing.